My name is Paul Shore, and you're watching another edition of The Street Speaks, a spontaneous speaker's corner for Montrealers, where we give you and your neighbors a totally unfiltered platform to express yourselves about anything. Nothing is off limits. This week, some Montrealers are sharing their stories of having kids with Down syndrome. Others are speaking out about the racism they're still experiencing here. And one Montrealer is sharing his story of addiction and recovery from heroin. Also ahead, our house band in Elaine, Skinny Bros, returns with special guests, the vocal stylings of Aza and Freddie Vary, and performers Sandra Lee and Inga Noth both take to the Street Speak Soapbox.
I have been involved in the community for the last 50 years. I continue to try to help ordinary, average people who want to live and want to change their community.
I'll work with other young drug addicts, alcoholics, trans kids who are suffering with being themselves.
I studied in social work. That was my background, my degree, and there was something that bothered me throughout the entire 3 years was that I felt like social work was only addressing the symptoms without actually affecting root causes of poverty and discrimination and mental health problems. And
Yeah, I do it all the time, especially being like actively involved with rehab programs. I have been that person who's in a hole of hating myself and not wanting to exist, and through whatever mind magic I managed to get out. For someone else, having that person in front of you, which I did also, is like a good way to relate, is a good way to like feel like you have a friend, to feel like there's not, that it's not completely empty.
it seemed a little bit like what we were doing is just patchwork or band-aids, and people are jumping from service to service, and never sat right with me. And I did 20 weeks in my field and I quit.
I really don't like it when people feel alone. And I would give up my time anytime, as much of it as I can, to show that to people, that they're not alone, that they're supported and loved, regardless of the shit they've done or the shit they think.
And I felt like food is the one like common grouper. It's the one thing that, regardless of age or ethnicity or you know, financial background, everyone's got to eat.
I want people to know that it's okay to feel the way you feel, and you can always feel better, even though it won't be right away and it won't be forever. It's normal to feel bad, and that's fine.
And when you start getting into gardening, you start seeing how it can affect your physical health, your mental health. You start to create bonds in the neighborhoods. You start making friends. You're not as lonely. You're not as depressed.
I do it because it's a good reminder of where I come from and where I don't want to be, which is like kind of a dark way of looking at it, but it's totally valid and true. And seeing it in front of you, sweating, is a good way of like kind of putting that fear back. Healthy fear.
You're eating better, you're making your physical environment better, you're saving money, and I was like, oh, well, this is what I gotta do.
But so that's why I occupy myself with, you know,
awesome.
Trying to take care of others, because like it gives me a reason to again feel okay with myself more and more every day. And that kind of work is it's free. Like there's no, you just gotta look for it. Helping someone else is easy. You just gotta try.
I'm very happy to welcome back to the show our house band on a roof, Montreal's finest, Skinny Bros.
Well, he has the Down syndrome, which is the English term, but I prefer the French term, trisomie 21, trisomy 21, because I think that's more descriptive. And unfortunately, the scientist who found the chromosome, his name was Down, so it's just Down is a negative connotation.
He's now 5.5 years old. He's beautiful, he's charming, he's adorable.
It was a normal pregnancy. It was my second, so I was, very happy. Of course, we were waiting very impatiently to find out what the sex of the baby was, and that you don't find out until the second ultrasound. Everything up to that point was going fine.
I chose not to have an amniocentesis, and my doctor was not happy with that. He was furious with me. And
I didn't want to do it because those screening tests will tell you what's your risk of having a baby with Down syndrome. It won't tell you if you have a baby with Down syndrome or not.
When they told me it's because, we think there's a marker for Down syndrome, and you're here for an ultrasound and an amniocentesis, and my world just went.
And we got the results 48 hours afterwards. But during these 48 hours, I wasn't expecting that the baby would be okay. I was sure there was something.
But we always held the hope that she wouldn't, that it was a false positive.
It was a shock, and then again, our decision was already made. It was very clear for both of us that we wouldn't terminate the pregnancy.
But the one thing that has always remained strong in my choice to stay with my husband, because there were times I didn't want to, was that there was never a doubt in his mind that I didn't have to deal with going home and saying, are you with me in this or not?
And then when I started to realize that my goals for Philip were the same as my other children, that he would reach his maximum capacity, that he would excel in what he could excel. So basically the goals were exactly the same as my other 3 children. There sometimes is the belief that less abled is less important or less valued. And that's something we have to keep looking at and make sure that people realize less able doesn't mean less worthy.
I'm so happy to welcome to the Street Speak Soapbox Montreal actress and mom, Sandra Lee.
"99.9%? Definitely the numbers I did not want to hear. My heart literally fell to my stomach. I felt powerless. I was powerless. Yet I still believed in my 0.1% chance. She'll be fine, I repeated, trying to convince myself the diagnosis was wrong. I was at work in a crowded room when the doctor called with the news. Sobbing and voice quivering, I instinctively ran to my friend and colleague, Carrie. "She's still a baby, just love her. Everything will be okay," she said, in a reassuring tone. Her calm demeanor surprised and angered me. Nothing was okay, and never would be again. Then she told me a story that changed me forever. When I was a little girl, about 6 or so, I used to love shopping with my mom. One day I saw a boy. He was different than other boys my age. He looked different, he talked different, and his walk was sloppy and slow. I stared and I pointed and I asked my mom what was wrong with him. She just stood there and smiled. "Nothing," she said. "What do you mean?" I insisted. "Well, God sometimes sends angels here on earth to remind us to keep loving each other. That boy was an angel. God made him that way to remind us that love is unconditional. It means we should love someone exactly as they are." I immediately went up to the boy and I hugged him. He didn't hug me back. He just stood there, smiled, then he walked away. I followed him to the next aisle. I wanted to tell him that I loved him. But he was gone. Nowhere to be found, like he just vanished into thin air. To this day, Carrie believes that boy was an angel. Now I too know an angel. Only she hasn't vanished. She's real. She has Down syndrome. She's my daughter. And her name is Ella.
Well, to make a difference, you certainly need infant stimulation. They should have, special, not hospitals, but a special program where, these children are given infant stim right away and to get their muscles going, because a lot of them have floppy muscles. But when you meet my son Philip, he doesn't.
If you stimulate them a lot, or even just normally as you would with any child, and love them, that's the most important part.
The more we invest in the children when they're young, the more we'll benefit later with less costs and less expensive later on down the road,
There are waiting lists also. But,
There are waiting lists, are there?
But they're much less now than when Illy was born.
For example, speech therapy. When Philip was born, when he was about a year old, I said I must get him into speech therapy, and there was a 2.5-year waiting list at the children's.
So, baby was just born, yeah. And they say everywhere that, you have to go into the stimulation program as soon as you can, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, well, what is this?
So I said, well, I'm going to have to go private. And at that time, we had 4 young kids. I had my mother in a wheelchair. It's another story. And it was $75 an hour. And that was a lot out of our budget. Twice a week.
Not covered by anything, obviously.
No, not covered by anything.
Well, eventually the CLSC came in, but that was really slow and not really...
Not advisable.
Well, they give you what they call support to the family.
Yeah.
Subvention.
Emotional support? Or like...
No, not at all. You'll never get that.
No, okay. Is it...
Like the one thing that I really needed and I didn't get in France that I'm getting now is just the feeling that like we're a part of this community. We're okay.
Well, I love here. I love things that I love to do. And I love everything about my life.
And nowadays they get married. They live on their own. They have apartments. Most of them I know are working. They certainly have jobs. And
oh yes, yeah. I've been working at this wowing company. I've been there like, over 3 years, and because my boss said he hired me because I'm perfect with the job.
That's amazing. I must feel... How does that make you feel?
First happy. It feels like the company makes me as my family.
When I walk down the street and people see Juliet, they're not shocked. I don't ever get the feeling of like, oh, you poor thing.
I think they're pretty happy. I think they're happy.
The thing I liked about Quebec, and which was different than when I went anywhere else, was that in Quebec, the racism or the prejudice and stuff was just, as long as you spoke French, it was fine. And so then the moment I started speaking French, oh, c'est pas français, and then all of a sudden it would change.
If I'm coming here, my daddy told me, you need to go to school. You need to go to respect the government, the police, the teacher. I have good education.
In like English Canada, where when I would hear the same slur, it was like seething with this hatred and anger.
If you need to go to work, you see your face. If you have the diploma, no diploma, you say no, I don't have the job. If you need to go to louer l'appartement, you garde aussi la couleur.
Yeah, it's ignorance, but different types of ignorance. Like it was the way I perceived the ignorance was different. And plus, I mean, I played hockey, I played sports, so I was the visible minority in all my teams.
I don't really feel it because I put out a certain kind of energy, but it does come once in a while, but I just ignore it. I rather pay attention to the positive than the negative.
I get called a packy. It's like, okay, well, I start with a history lesson.
Is that the word that people just use?
I've been called everything because they just see me and sometimes they don't even know. I was once called an Afghan. This is before the Afghanistan, before the U.S. went to Afghanistan.
I'm of mixed race, so I do get prejudice within the black race and also from people that will say, you know, go back where you came from or something like that. Yeah.
And so the guy calls me an Afghan and he wants to fight. And
is that even a derogatory term? An Afghan?
No,
I was the person from Afghanistan.
I was perplexed. And so I was like, you know what, look, we're going to grab a drink. If you're still here in 2-3 hours, then okay, then we'll go then.
Really? You've had that here?
Yeah, I had that. And I said, yes. Where's the ticket? I'll go. But I was like, yeah, give me a ticket. I'll go on the beach. You know what I mean? It's paradise there. That's not an insult to me. So,
if it's mean, then sometimes, yeah, I've gotten angry. But I tear them down with what I've got. If there's 6'3", 6'4", I'm not going to engage in a fisticuffs because I'm going to get pummeled.
You can not judge the people if for the couleur, what do you say?
Color of their skin, of their pulp.
Yeah.
And the moment that all their friends start laughing at them, that's when they start escalating, and then they look even worse. So what I've found over the years, the only thing that works is public shaming.
She don't want no complications when she opens up her eyes. She just looking for vibrations, and she's gonna take her time. So let her be free. She knows what she needs. She's the one to choose who she is. Looking for vibrations. Yeah. Looking for vibrations. She's looking for vibrations. Oh, looking for vibrations. Yeah. Looking for vibrations. Looking for vibrations.
Like the first time you shot up, like, were you worried? Were you like afraid of needles?
I was when I was a kid, but then like you kind of grow past it. I was well into being an addict physically and emotionally before I ever started injecting. I have loving parents, they're together. I'm not from a broken home. We have conflicting views. I'm not like my parents.
You love them.
Yeah, absolutely, and I know that it's reciprocated. Like, I always wanted to do the counter thing. Counterculture is always attractive, and it blows my mind when people aren't also attracted to counterculture. So being attracted to that, you're like, okay, well, I'm not gonna hang out with the good kids at school, I'm gonna hang out with these other kids who are doing something bad. You just feel on top of the world when it comes to the drug habits and the drug use. It was always a question of, again, ego. I wanted to be worse than you in the best possible way.
Were you able to function while you were high?
No, I was the worst. I was just a mess, man. Like, I couldn't contain myself. The change in attitude came with like seeing gray in the world, people being willing to help. It was pathetic. I thought that the world was a shit place to be in, so you might as well be in a shit condition, and the sooner that everyone realized that, the better off we'd all be.
What were your parents thinking at the time?
They were worried.
They must have been...
Yeah, they were sick. They were fucking worried sick, absolutely. It's not something that we talk about in depth. It's something we talk about. What I'm getting at is, like, I didn't feel deserving of any of that. I was put into a rehab program.
You put yourself in, or you were put in?
No, I was put in.
By?
My girlfriend and my family, and a couple friends of mine who had previously been there. It's just kind of like a natural thing that happens when you're a junkie, that a lot of your friends die, a lot of people around you die, and sometimes when it happens really quickly, it gets to you. You start to get really scared, which I think is a normal feeling, obviously. And so I was feeling really scared, and I went to my partner at the time, and I was like, okay, like, this is not going to be okay unless something changes really fast. They wake me up one morning and they're like, hey, like there's this place that's going to take you. You got to go there now because none of us know how to handle this. You don't know how to handle this. And all of that was absolutely true. I said yes because I didn't have anything else to say. And it worked out. It's a place that like I care about a lot. You're going to do what you want to do. Feel free to do it. Just know that there's help and like be open to it. But you know, when the pain is there, like go over that mountain of like accepting the help because the suffering is not going to get better. I have never met a casual heroin user, ever.
Are you on Tinder?
No, I'm not on Tinder.
Are you curious
yes,
about it?
Yes, of course. I was curious about it, and yes, I tried it. Yes, like many
people. Did you meet any people on it?
No, I didn't. It was just it's not for me. Maybe for other people it works, and I don't judge. It's fine.
I also fell in love with someone through a screen, so I don't know what to say about that. Like you also feel a lot of things through a screen, so by not being physically present, you also get to discover other parts of someone. I think being curious about other things is just the body.
What's Tinder? Tinder is an application like where you get to meet and swipe left, swipe right if you like the person, but you get to swipe left or right if you like the person, not just by pictures, just by physical attributes.
Sounds like a really great way to have a meaningful relationship with someone.
Yes, absolutely.
How?
You just ask more questions because you have to fill the conversation.
Oh, on the Skype, right?
Yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah, okay.
So I think it's also a good way to just learn about someone.
You know, when we're young, we're a little bit naive, we're a little bit in our own little bubble, but as we get older, at least for myself, I found that the more I give of myself, the more rewarded I feel internally.
Questions can be like a lot, like you have to answer, because if you like leave it blank, you leave it blank. If you in front of someone that you like and then you ask your question and then you're like, oh, I don't want to answer, like you're giving a hug and then it just disappears. But like you have to answer the question. It really fosters conversation in some way.
Yeah, not everybody always thinks that way, but it's almost like it's almost selfishness to want to give of yourself because of the satisfaction or the reward you get out of giving of yourself. Making someone else happy aside from yourself is the biggest gift.
There are so many couples that they are together because they don't want to be by themselves. They are afraid, and financially they are not independent.
I think I always I wanted the similar relationship that my parents had. What they both gave each other, the sacrifices they made for one another, and the love they had for one another was something that I guess I always strived to, and I only got that later on in life, and I'm fortunate because I have that same relationship with my wife now.
Yeah.
Do you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend now?
No, I don't have a boyfriend or neither a girlfriend. Okay. No. I enjoy my freedom. I do whatever I want with my time. No drama. Nothing. It's like just me and friends and enjoying my time. Yeah.
Good.
Taking care of myself. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to welcome back to the Street Speak Soapbox, by way of Germany, Montreal comic and improviser, Miss Inga Knopf.
Recently, I had the idea to self-wax my bikini zone an hour before my date would arrive at my place. Even though I had never done any waxing before, I somehow thought it was a great idea. I asked my roommate if I could borrow her wax, and when she asked me what I needed it for, I lied to her and I told her I needed it for my armpits. I lied to her because I was pretty sure she would tell me it was a bad idea. I heated the wax, and because there was some wax on the outside of the container, my fingers got immediately incredibly sticky. I got wax everywhere, my doorknob, my sheets, my laptop. I accidentally ripped out patches of pubic hair because my fingers were so sticky. I then tried to apply the wax, but due to a lack of fine motor skills, I just got it everywhere. I didn't manage to pull it all off with the paper strips. The parts where I succeeded in pulling it off immediately started bleeding. I looked at my watch. 30 minutes until my date would arrive. I looked at my lower body. A battlefield! Frustrated, I had to admit my defeat. How the hell was I supposed to get that sticky stuff off my body? I covered myself in a housecoat and asked my roommate. "Oh, we had an oil for that," she said, but I threw it out. Desperately, I tried to not break out into tears while realizing that my housecoat was now permanently stuck to my lower body. In a sudden moment of clarity, I realized that if there was an oil that came with the wax, any oil should work. I grabbed the bottle of olive oil, ripped off the housecoat, jumped under the shower, and started scrubbing my body with oil. And it worked! Tears of relief ran down my face. If there's something that I learned from that, it's if you don't tell someone about something because you think they'll say it's a bad idea, it's probably a bad idea.
That wraps up yet another edition of The Street Speaks. A special thank you to all the Montrealers who shared their voices with me this past week. Also, thank you to our house band in Elaine, Skinny Bros, and to performers Inga Knopf and Sandra Lee, who both took to the Soapbox. Please join me next week, as some Montrealers are speaking out about why they're skeptical to engage in our politics. Others are reflecting on the word work, what it means to them, and how finding balance in their lives has become a struggle. And some speak out about aging and dying, two realities that we don't talk about enough in public. Also, performers Johanna Nutter and Michael Hughes both returned to the Street Speaks Soapbox. If you want to get in touch with me, don't be shy. I can be reached any which way, especially on Facebook and on Twitter. See you next time.
My name is Erin, and you're watching The Street Speaks.